Hello and welcome to this old school Monday edition of the Pipe Bomb Wrestling Podcast, the show that is for the fans, by the fans. I am your phenomenal host, Mr. Podcasting, Chris Belcher. You can follow me at Chris Belcher24 on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. The show is at PBW Podcast. Make sure you are subscribed and you rate and review our podcast wherever you find your podcast, and on the bodyslam.net YouTube channel and on Sportswire Radio. Make sure you show some support to all of our partners as well. I know they would greatly appreciate it. They have some great shows on their networks, and I know that they would appreciate your support as well, because we're not the only game in town. But that being said, we are here for your entertainment pleasure, so make sure you keep it tuned in right here. I am your phenomenal host, Chris Belcher, and with me is the young buck to my left, in the flesh, one more time this week.
There we go.
Mr. Andy York.
Wardrobe change, but
well, slightly.
I had to get the hat.
You had to get the hat. I know. I get you. I understand.
I'm sorry if my hair was distracting the last time, because it was distracting me. So if it was distracting me, I'm sure it was distracting everybody else.
Well, I mean, I'm like really close to the camera. This is like a little wonky.
We're in the Matrix.
Whatever.
It's fine.
It is what it is. So we are here again. Full disclosure, peek behind the curtain. As you can probably tell, we're recording these last two episodes back to back because it is the Thanksgiving holiday.
Yep.
So we hope you enjoyed your Thanksgiving with your family, but we are still bringing you your every week Pipe Bomb Wrestling Podcast episodes, as we'll do for Christmas as well. So make sure that you keep it tuned in right here.
Pumping out the content, making sure that you have plenty of entertainment on your long drives like I do and like you do and all this other stuff. So make sure you keep it tuned in right here. But on today's old school 101 edition of the show, well, it's not really like super old school, but technically it did happen more than 5 years ago. So, oh my gosh,
maybe 9 years ago.
Oh my gosh,
is going to be the topic of our conversation today. It is still November. It is still relevant to Survivor Series season. We are talking about The Shield. That's right. 9 years ago, 2012 Survivor Series at the Barclays Center, The Shield debuted as the henchman of CM Punk, and that storyline quickly got dissolved because the Shield rose in popularity so quickly. I wasn't watching during this time. This was during my dark period, as my dark period was from WrestleMania 2010 to Survivor Series 2014. So I was not here during this time, but you have talked numerous times on this podcast about how the Shield really captivated you. Of course, you were a big CM Punk fan as well. So give me some context to this debut, since I wasn't watching, and your reaction and your initial thoughts to the Shield.
So you guys still got to remember this, like all three of them came from NXT. Obviously, Dean Ambrose and Roman Reigns were not in NXT as long. Well, not as long. Dean Ambrose and Seth Rollins had done a lot of stuff with FCW, yeah. And so they had done a lot of stuff. Roman had done a little bit of stuff there. It's hard to believe that Roman Reigns and Tyler Breeze were at one point the FCW Tag Team Champions.
Wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah, which is definitely a big shock. Dean Ambrose and Seth Rollins feuded for the FCW Championship, and they were obviously kind of part of the destined to do this forever crowd.
Yep.
And so I think that's kind of the backstory to them. Seth won the first ever NXT championship. So like all of them were still in NXT when this happened. And this was during the time when NXT wasn't on TV. It was on the network. And it was not as popular as it was during its heyday as it is now. So there was a lot of people that didn't know who these guys were, who was coming in here. So they debuted at Survivor Series. The match was CM Punk versus Ryback versus John Cena, I think it was a triple threat, if I remember correctly. And all I remember is Ryback hit his finishing move, which I forget what it's called.
I don't
he hit his finishing move on Punk, and as he was going for the pin, just all of a sudden, three guys just rushed the ring and started attacking him, put him through the table and the power bomb and everything. And very quickly, Michael Cole on commentary just starts screaming their names like, oh, that's Seth Rollins, that's Roman Reigns, that's Dean Ambrose, to establish kind of who they were. And so it was one of those, like, it kind of felt like a Nexus moment when these guys kind of jumped the barricade and not necessarily like destroy the ring like, Nexus did, which is Nexus also attacked CM Punk. CM Punk was attached to this
Right.
as well, which I
Right.
think is very interesting.
Right.
And then the Shield makes this big impact, and everybody just kind of like, what? Like, what was that? What is
Mhm.
happening? What, like, are they with Punk? Are they not with Punk? Who are these guys? What are they going to do? And so it was very like it was intriguing, and it got your attention right away as they made
Sure.
their debut.
Sure. And yeah, that's very interesting. And then they took on the life of their own.
Yep.
I remember I watched the Broken Skull Sessions interview with Seth Rollins, and he was telling Austin, he was like, look, they didn't give us really any kind
No.
of direction. They
Mm-mm.
just said, just go.
Yeah.
And it turned into what it turned into.
Yep.
And they had to get their own gear and, basically create this own thing. And then, like we keep saying, it took on a life of its own. They split them off from CM Punk. They won championship gold very, very early.
Had some of the best matches of the year. Their match with, I believe it was the Wyatt family at Battleground, in 2014, I believe it was 2014, was absolutely amazing. Between the three of them, when they initially turned face, was a huge moment because this was during the peak Authority era. This was during that time period, and the Shield was kind of like the judge, the jury, and the executioner for the Shield, or for the Authority.
Right.
So basically, like, they were told to go out and get Daniel Bryan, to go out and get Jerry the King Lawler, to go out and get all these guys, and they're in the ring with Jerry the King Lawler and Kane, Corporate Kane, which I hate Corporate Kane, but he's in the corner, and they have Jerry the King Lawler surrounded. They just said, we always do what's best for business, and then they turn around and attack Corporate Kane, and it was just this massive pop when it happened.
Wow.
So that was a really cool moment. So they had a lot of like really awesome moments between the three of them as a group.
And they won several titles very early on. I think Ambrose was U.S. champion for over a
long
year.
time.
Roman and Seth were tag
They were
champs.
unbeaten for a long time.
Right.
Until they accidentally concussed the Undertaker, and then they got beat the next week as punishment.
Boo.
But Daniel Bryan was the one to beat him. So it was like it was a big moment
sense
when Daniel Bryan did it. So
it made sense. And you mentioned the Authority. When they turned face, they had an incredible run with Evolution. Evolution got back together. Randy Orton, Batista, and Triple H. Just some incredible matches. It was after WrestleMania 30. You had I think there was 2 matches.
Yeah, you had one at Payback. You had one at Payback,
maybe one at Extreme,
and then one at Extreme Rules. That was you had one at Extreme Rules first,
Battleground,
and then you had one at Battleground or something like that, where it was elimination.
Yeah.
And they pitched a shutout.
They sweeped them.
They pitched a shutout. The Extreme Rules match was
is that amazing. The one where Rollins dives off of the stands, like off of the top of the tunnel?
Yeah, that's also the one where they fight out. It's like the first time they ever fought out to the pre-show area on top of that table and everything else. That was a really cool moment.
So all that being said, the spotlight was heavily on the Shield, and then the night after that second match was the chair shot heard around the world. Seth Rollins makes his turn, and he joins the Authority, splitting the Shield up, not forever, but splitting the Shield up. I, again, still wasn't watching it this time. What were your initial thoughts on this whole thing and Seth Rollins and that kind of stuff?
It was heartbreaking. It was absolutely heartbreaking, and it was perfect. Because they weren't at the point where they were where we were saying they should have done this a while ago. Like, we weren't at that point. It was the perfect time because nobody was really expecting it.
Right.
But there was nothing else that you could really do with them at the same time, and I don't think we had realized that. What's really interesting is I think opening the show is when Batista quit again.
Correct.
Waved his hand to the crowd because everybody was calling him Blue Tista and everything else. He waved his hand to the crowd. And so that's when Triple H and Randy Orton came out and said, and Triple H said, we'll always have a plan B. And then Seth did that. And what's really amazing, if you go back and watch it, when Seth steps back to hit, you can literally hear fans yelling, no. Like, no, don't do it. Yeah. So, like, it was perfectly planned out. They had been teasing that Ambrose was going to be the one to turn. And Seth was kind of like the glue that was holding them together, the one that was trying to talk him off the ledge and everything else. And then Seth is the one that turned on both of them. it turned into one of Seth's best characters, a character that got him over. Dean Ambrose got over. Roman Reigns was really over for a while until they pushed too hard. But yeah,
We'll talk about that.
Yeah, we'll talk about that. But it was one of the last few truly shocking moments. They've had another one. They did another one, but it was one of the last true shocking moments of like a heel turn that I can remember for a long time.
Well, in Rollins' interview with Austin, he was saying that there were a couple times that they wanted to do it even sooner.
Yeah.
And
they're like, no, we want to.
They talked him out of it. And then he said finally that day they pulled him in and said, tonight's the night.
Which is really interesting because, like, at the beginning of the interview, when Stone Cold and when Seth were talking about the Shield, they didn't want to be a team. Like, they wanted to be their own individual guys, but they saw the potential of where it was going to get them. And if you pull the trigger too soon, it would have derailed all of their momentum.
Absolutely.
And so I think they waited. They didn't wait too long. They didn't go too quick. They did it at the exact time, the perfect moment when everything was going great for the Shield. Nothing was going wrong. And then all of a sudden you just let it fall apart.
Yep. I remember my first exposure. So I came in at the end of this. Rollins was already a member of the Authority. And I remember, again, turning on Survivor Series 2014 because the rumors were running rampant that Sting was going to be there. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to take a chance. And if he's not there, he's not there. And I remember immediately being drawn to Seth Rollins. Immediately, like, that guy was like, I knew he was a bad guy. But I've always, like, even going back to my 96 days of watching wrestling, I've always been a fan of heels.
Oh, yeah.
So seeing Rollins, I was like, oh my gosh, like, this guy, I want this guy. Ambrose was always the wonky one for me, but he's just the wonky one in general. But
the thing about Ambrose is he got a lot of comparison to Brian Pillman Jr.
True.
And if he was in any other era than the PG era, I think he would have been the breakout star of the Shield. I really do.
You think so?
I really do, because I think he would have been that loose cannon character that was needed.
If the Shield was in the Attitude Era.
Yeah, I think he would have been. I think he would have been the breakout guy from the group.
I agree with that. Yep, I definitely agree with that. So we push on Seth Rollins, of course, his infamous cash in of Money in the Bank at WrestleMania 31.
Greatest cash in of all time.
Yes, probably.
I would say so. Yeah, I'm biased, but
I know you're biased, but I'm also biased to the other one that is the greatest cash in of all time, being the first one. But yeah, like, Rollins cashes in, Rollins becomes champion. Rollins has an incredible year run where he's champion and then he blows his knee out. In Rollins' first match back after blowing his knee out, he challenges Roman Reigns for the WWE title. Rollins wins, and Ambrose cashes in Money in the Bank that night, and Ambrose becomes champion. So the Shield, all three, held the WWE Championship at the same night. How cool is that?
That's awesome. It was kind of like we all kind of figured that was going to happen, especially when Ambrose won the Money in the Bank.
Right.
But it's one of those that it was obvious for a reason. And it was like, it made sense. It made perfect sense. I absolutely loved every second of that. What's really cool is, like, kind of going back to, like, the Batman and Joker aspect of Seth Rollins and Dean Ambrose. They had right as soon as the Shield broke up, they had the feud of the year between the two of them until Bray Wyatt kind of hologrammed his way into that Hell in a Cell match.
Right.
That did not make any sense. But those two guys, like, had really great feuds. What's really weird is, like, we haven't seen a strong feud between Roman and Seth still. Like, even to this point, we still have not seen that yet.
It's coming.
It has to.
It's coming.
But yeah, it was that moment. We got that one match between the two of them. They had a match on, which I did my homework. They had a match on Raw
Thank you for
like a
doing
year prior, or a few months prior, I guess. Excuse me. But I think it was a really cool moment because this was during the peak, I think, of the Roman massive push that nobody wanted to really see during that time. It was right after WrestleMania 32. It was right after he kind of ran through AJ Styles. And we get to this point, and Seth winning was a massive shock. And then Ambrose cashing in was just kind of like the cherry on top.
Sure was. And then you have Ambrose has a run with the title. Rollins, Rollins and Ambrose kind of go back and forth with this will they, won't they. Basically, man, the Shield reunion was snake bitten from the beginning.
Yeah.
Every time they've tried to put it back together, something bad has happened.
Yeah.
For example, They reunited, and it was in 2017.
Mm-hmm.
Ambrose gets hurt.
Yep.
So it seems like it was going to be the Shield marching towards WrestleMania 34.
Yep.
And that didn't happen because Ambrose got hurt. Hypothetically, if that doesn't happen, if the Shield is reunited and they march all the way to WrestleMania 34, do you think it would have been better for Roman heading into that show? Or do you think the fans would have crapped on him just like they did anyway, which caused Lesnar to keep the title at WrestleMania?
I think they would have crapped on it anyway.
You think so?
I really do, because they did that later on with Roman, and fans weren't happy about it.
Well, it worked for a minute later on.
Yeah, but it once people kind of realized the purpose of what they were doing, I think people kind of, were anti, or were definitely against it.
Right.
And so I think it may have worked for the moment. It may have worked enough to get the title on Roman, but I don't think it would have. I think the honeymoon period, it would have been really short for that championship run.
Gotcha. Well, because Roman wins the title at SummerSlam later that year, and Braun Strowman threatens to cash in Money in the Bank the next night on Raw, and then the Shield actually does reunite again.
Which I will say, when the Shield music hit,
that was nuts.
I popped.
I remember watching that live, and oh my gosh. So then it got scrapped again because Roman got leukemia.
Yep.
So now we don't have a Shield reunion again. So then the third reunion happens in 2019.
Yep.
When Ambrose's contract's coming to an end, and they try to milk as much out of this cash cow as they can.
They did.
With the Shield. And man, what I remember the most about this run, the third run, because we talked about how cool the second one was with the pop and everything, but the third run was being in the building at the Barclays Center the night after WrestleMania 35. And they do, after the show goes off the air on Monday Night Raw, they do all three Shield guys in the ring together, a send-off for Ambrose. Cool. Without the cameras, it was just for the crowd, because that was the building they debuted in.
Right.
And that was going to be Ambrose's last Raw, because he wrestled Bobby Lashley that night, and Lashley put him through a table and basically sent him off.
Yeah.
So that was his last TV appearance, and they did the in-ring stuff. That was really cool. Yeah. For them to have that moment together.
Yeah, I saw some videos of that online, and it was very I don't want to say difficult to watch, but you just kind of realize that we don't know if we'll ever see this again. Which I honestly wouldn't be shocked if we won't.
Nope.
And so I think that's very, that's sad, but it's also one of those, like, it's something that we'll never have again, which makes it so special, and that's what makes it like so memorable for everybody, is that we'll never get these kind of moments again. And so I think that's really important about that. And then what I really loved, because we talked about Seth turning on them, I think the second turn, when Ambrose turned on Seth after the night that Roman announced he had leukemia.
Yeah, I didn't even mention that.
The air went out of the building when that happened. Sure. Like, the air went out of the building, and it was done so perfectly. Like, both turns were done so great. Because you weren't expecting it. Like, that was the one night you were not expecting it, and they happened both times.
Plus, they won the tag titles.
They just won the tag titles, and then they go for the hug, and Ambrose just drops them.
Yep.
And you could just see what made it, like, what was really interesting, if you go back and watch, is like, after he drops him the first time and he's kind of cradling Rollins' head, Rollins is like tapping him, saying, "It's okay, it's okay," and then Ambrose just drops him again and goes psychotic. So all of that was just great.
Before we move on to the post-Shield, because we are going to talk about things that happen after the Shield, I want to read this excerpt from Mox's new book.
Yeah.
Rollins tweeted this out. And it's a little bit lengthy, so bear with me, but I want to read this. It says, there are only 3 guys on the planet who know what it was like to be in the Shield. Nobody can put on a t-shirt and join the Shield. We tried that with Kurt Angle for one night.
and Triple H.
And Triple H. The Shield does not recruit. There's no revolving door. There is and will only ever be one incarnation of the Shield. Mm-hmm. Me, Seth Rollins, and Roman Reigns. It's an incredible thing to be part of something so much bigger than yourself, something that takes on a life of its own, something that will never truly belong to WWE. It was our baby. In creating the Shield, we created a monster. It didn't come to life in a creative meeting. It came to life before your very eyes, evolving and growing into something that captured fans' imagination all over the world, something they could believe in. That's the kind of thing you wouldn't trade for the world. So we just sat here and said that this reunion will never happen again.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people would point to, well, Moxie's in AEW. Of course it's not going to happen again. But he just wrote it right there.
Yeah.
That like, of all the bad things that he had to say about WWE on the way out the door,
Mm-hmm.
this is what he holds special to
Yeah.
me.
Yeah. And I think that shows how strong the Shield connection was, like together, but also like with the fans. Like no other group really was making their entrance through the crowd like they were. It's really interesting. They were the authorities' pet for a while, but they became the people's group very quickly. And I think that was like what was so cool about all three of them. And all three of them are completely different people. Like they're not the same guys, copy and paste all together. They all three are different, and what they all three brought to the team, like what their weakness was somebody else's strength.
Sure.
And that made it up. Like Roman wasn't that great on the mic. During the beginning, Seth wasn't that great on the mic. Ambrose was. Ambrose was great on the mic. Roman and Seth and Ambrose weren't necessarily the best in the ring. Seth was.
Yep.
Roman or Ambrose and Seth didn't have the power, but Roman did. And Roman at one point was the most popular member of the Shield.
Yep.
And so all three guys just worked together so great. Even when they tried to capture that lightning in the bottle again, it wasn't as special as that first run.
Sure.
Just like a lot of things, just like when they tried to reboot DX back in 2006, it wasn't like what it was during the Attitude Era.
Sure.
And so I think that's kind of like the same thing here of they'll never capture that in the bottle again. They'll try, and I'm sure they'll try with three other dudes, but I don't think they'll ever get what they got.
Well, I think the important thing also to look at here is this is the first group really that I can think of off the top of my head. Send your hate tweets to @ChrisBelcher24 if I forget somebody. This is the first group that I can really think of that was so dominant, so early, with three guys that nobody knew.
Yeah.
Three guys came in, brand new guys, and they really built 3 stars.
And the fans got behind them.
Yep.
Because like we see NXT 2.0 right now, they're bringing in a lot of new guys that nobody really cares about.
Right.
And that was not the case here. Like I think some people knew obviously about Jon Moxley, and some people knew about Tyler Black. Nobody really knew a lot about Roman Reigns.
Right.
And just those 3 guys were unknown guys that got themselves over. This was WWE giving them their shot, and they took it and they ran with it, and they did everything they could with it. I love the story that Seth told on the Steve Austin podcast, on the Broken Skull session, when they jumped Randy like the first time. And like Seth, like their thing was they weren't told to go easy on anybody. So they didn't go easy. They didn't go easy on The Rock when they attacked him. They didn't go easy on Undertaker when they attacked him. And so listening to Seth retell that story of Ambrose is one of the safest workers you'll know, but when you're getting chop blocked and you don't know you're getting chop blocked, it scares you. And it was a safe chop block.
Sure.
But like that's just the attitude they had was, this is our company now, and nobody else is going to take it from us. And it really worked out.
Well, I think that mindset also, Seth had that mindset for so long. I don't know the intricacies of Roman and Ambrose, but I know Seth mentioned in that interview as well when, you know, they were creating the NXT brand. He and Triple H almost fired him, but he and Triple H had the meeting. Seth told him, like, look, put the title on me. I am the only guy that can do this.
And I think, like, obviously, I think you can look at Jon Moxley and Dean Ambrose and see he's the type of guy that's going to tell you how he really feels about things.
Absolutely.
Seth Rollins is the same way. Roman Reigns is the same way. And I think all 3 of them were like, when they were probably given bad ideas, they were probably like, this doesn't make sense. Like, this makes absolutely no sense at all. And I think that's, in a weird way, I think Vince respects that if you do it the right way. And I think all three guys did it the right way. Maybe not all the time, but they did it the right way to where Vince was like, okay, you want to do it your way? Go do it your way. And it worked out.
It's just a shame that we couldn't get Jon Moxley in the WWE.
Yeah.
Like that they couldn't figure out how to get Jon Moxley into the WWE.
Instead of using light tubes and thumbtacks, he was using ketchup and mustard.
Well, and and some of it was absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah. And it was the piece. I think, honestly, I understand why they have it, but honestly, I think it was the PG hindrance.
So, do you think? I don't want to take anything away from Moxley.
Right.
We're getting ready to talk about all three guys individually, but I don't want to take anything away from Moxley. But do you think that speaks more to the abilities of Seth and Roman, that they can take their character and adapt it to that PG and still make it really good?
Not necessarily. Maybe in some way, but I think with Moxley, he is just that Brian Pillman Jr. loose cannon. Honestly, he is like if Mick Foley and Brian Pillman Jr. got put together.
Right.
That's John Moxley, and it's hard to censor that. It's hard to rein that back in. Even like with the Brock Lesnar feud at WrestleMania 32, when they were like teasing the barbed wire, teasing the thumbtacks. That's when everybody was like, "We're gonna see the real John Moxley, the real Dean Ambrose right now," and we never really got to see that moment. We got to see the thumbtacks, I guess, when Ambrose and Jericho.
Yep.
But other than that, we didn't really get to see that. And I think I don't want to say it's necessarily a hindrance on Ambrose. I just think that in WWE, there's only so much you can do with a character like that.
I got you.
And you can't really. He went from being the psychopath to the lunatic, and
Right.
and there's a big difference between John Moxley, the psychopath that he is, and Dean Ambrose, the lunatic that is just wacky. You know what I mean?
Gotcha. No, that makes sense. All right. If we're talking about all three guys post Shield, John Moxley, obviously we know is in AEW. Was the first real big debut in AEW. The first real big signing. He had an incredible title run through the pandemic. We know now that he's checked himself voluntarily into rehab. I just read before I came over here to your house. Apparently, his first match out of rehab is this weekend.
Really?
Yeah, I think it's this Saturday
for an indie show.
Yep, he's in a tag match with Eddie Kingston against. Don't remember who it's against, but it's at the ECW arena.
Oh, that's cool.
I think it's Saturday.
That is cool.
So
that's a good comeback match.
So that'll be good for him. I'm sure there'll be videos of that floating around. Of course, that's as we're recording this. It'll be Thanksgiving weekend. So when you listen to this show on Monday, the match has already happened. But so look for those videos on YouTube. Roman Reigns has finally found his identity outside of the Shield. It has taken a long time, but it's one of those that I think it was Vince not wanting him to be a heel, much like John Cena. Finally, he gave in, and we are now seeing Roman Reigns be dominant and be the face of the company that they wanted him to be. Seth Rollins is just incredible.
Mr. Consistency.
It just that's it. He's Mr. Consistency. Like anything that he does is just fantastic. From the Drip God to Seth friggin' Rollins, Burn It Down,
even the Beast Slayer for a while,
the Beast Slayer, all the things. Just he's absolutely incredible. All three men outside of the Shield have become Grand Slam champions in WWE. So that being said, I know the word best isn't great in this question because of the description of the word best, but I'm going to ask this question anyway. Which Shield member has the best individual career?
Oh, man. So I'm sure we're talking about post Shield or altogether.
As just far as an individual. If you look back at the end of the day at Roman's career, at Mox's career, and at Rollins' career, who has the best?
That is wow. That is a tough
I know,
question.
Right? I know.
I think we're talking about accolades or like accomplishments.
Sort of.
I think if we're looking at just strictly accomplishments, I think it might be Roman.
Yep.
Because of how many Manias did he main event? How many championships did he win? How many titles? How many big matches did he have? So if we're looking at that, I think it might be Roman. If we're just talking about as a whole overall, it honestly might be 1A Seth, 1B Mox. Like it really might be. They're so close together.
You think
my
Roman's
opinion.
Not up there?
As a whole, overall, I don't think so. Not yet. Because he's just now finding his character, just now finding who he is. I think there might be a day when we say Roman Reigns is the greatest of all time. I really do.
Yeah.
But I don't think he's at that point yet. But at this point in time, I would probably say it's Seth because
Yep.
Seth has accomplished won the Rumble, won Money in the Bank, main evented won a main event at WrestleMania technically.
Yes.
He has won 2 titles at Mania.
Mhm.
He's beaten Brock. He's faced off against some of the best. He's had that 1 hour long match on Monday Night Raw where he beat Cena and Roman in the same night.
He consistently has the best matches.
He consistently has the best matches, and so I think right now it's probably him. But with Moxley's able to do more right now because he is not tied to just one company. He's able to go out and have the dream matches that we want to see. But if I had to say right now, it probably would be Seth.
Who's your favorite member of the
Seth.
Shield?
Seth.
Seth's favorite member of the
Seth
Shield?
is probably my favorite. If I had to rank him, it would be like Seth, then Mox, then Roman.
See, I would go Seth, Roman, Mox.
Yeah, but like
just because.
But Roman has moved up so much than
Sure.
where he was. You can remember that night at SummerSlam at your house when Roman won. I was hot under the collar. I was not happy about it at all. And now, like, I want Roman to. We talked about this before we recorded. I want Roman to hold the title for like 2 years. Like, I don't want him to lose it anytime soon. So.
Right. All right. This is a rabbit hole.
Here we go.
We have to go down this rabbit hole. These guys have incredible careers.
Yep.
No doubt about it. We mentioned earlier that they just captured lightning in a bottle.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to ask you if you think that the reason the Shield is remembered so fondly is because of the success of the 3 individual guys,
mm-hmm.
or if you think it's because of what they did initially,
mm-hmm.
or is it just this really big combination of all that?
I think it's honestly a combination of all that.
Because I don't think anybody could have foreseen when these 3 guys debuted in 2012.
Yeah.
The mega stars that they.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I don't think anybody saw that. And I think if they weren't the mega stars, I still think the Shield, if they had the run they had as the Shield, excuse me, and then the Shield breaks up and then they don't do anything, I still think the Shield by itself. I think the Shield by itself is probably one of, if not the greatest factions of all time.
Oh,
I really do.
Took the words right out of my mouth.
Because who else gets the opportunity in like one of their first few years gets to jump The Rock, gets to jump The Undertaker, gets to jump Kane, gets to jump Vince McMahon. Like they get to do all of these different things that not a lot of other people get to do.
I think they could have been a top faction in WWE.
Yep.
For that run.
Yep.
But it's because of their success afterwards that has propelled them, to me, into one of the top factions of all time.
Yep.
That being said, they belong on your Mount Rushmore faction.
Absolutely. I think they're the greatest of all time. I really do. I think they're better than.
Oh,
I know. I think they're because kind of like you said. What have they produced? I think Evolution is obviously up there as well.
Yep.
I think the only person holding them down is Batista.
I agree with that.
I think the only person holding them down is Batista because if you just had Triple H, Randy Orton, and Ric Flair, that's hard to beat.
Sure it is.
Batista kind of holds that down. DX is up there, but I just think the team success and the individual success, I really think it's the Shield.
There's 2 you're forgetting. The Four
Horsemen. Yep.
And the NWO.
But even the NWO, they had. If you're talking about the original 3 NWO,
I'm talking about
Hogan, Hall, and Scott.
I'm talking
Hogan,
about
Hall, and Scott.
Hogan, Hall, and Nash.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm talking about the not necessarily the original incarnation of the NWO, but the original way that the NWO came on the scene, the original way that the NWO was established, and everything that happened with that.
Yeah.
To me, they're the greatest faction of all time.
Yeah.
Because in 1996, you just gotta. I mean, I know you're the young buck, so
I was born that year.
God. Coming off the context of what wrestling was in 1996, we hadn't seen anything like this.
Definitely.
Not even the Four Horsemen and the dominance they had in the 80s and early 90s could have matched up to what the NWO did in 1996.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's not even close. No. So to me, because the NWO set the wrestling world on fire, and their merch still sells like it does, and they're still as celebrated as they were, they're the greatest of all time to me.
I agree. I can see that. And I obviously this is what's so fun about this is you grew up with the NWO, I grew up with the Shield. So this is like honestly, I don't want to say a cut like copy and paste because honestly, the NWO without the NWO, there wouldn't have been a Bullet Club. Without the Bullet Club, there probably wouldn't have been an AJ Styles, a Kenny Omega, Finn Balor, Young Bucks,
Right.
Adam Cole, even necessarily. So like
Yep.
the NWO has its impact in the wrestling world still today. Like
Right.
you said, everybody still buys the merch. You still see the NWO signs everywhere. You still see the impact that they had with Bullet Club and everything. We haven't got to see that yet with the Shield.
Right.
And I think
Sure.
we'll see that at some. I think we'll see that down the line. I just think if you look at, I'm gonna get a lot of hate for this because I'm the young guy, but that's okay. If you look at
Tweet him, guys,
that's fine.
at Andy
That's
_,
fine.
PBWP.
If you look at the three individuals, not outside the ring, because obviously Hogan is Hogan, but if you look at the three guys individuals that started it all, so let's look at Scott Hall, Kevin Nash, Hulk Hogan on one side, Seth Rollins, Roman Reigns, Dean Ambrose on the other side.
Yep.
I think as a whole and separate, I think the Shield has done more.
Sure.
And I think that's what elevates them, because I don't think Seth Rollins would be at the place he's at without the Shield. I don't think Roman would necessarily be at the place he's at without the Shield. Dean Ambrose, it's hard to say now because he's outside of WWE.
Right.
But in WWE, I don't think he would have been WWE champion without his run in the Shield.
Absolutely not. So I'm going to cheat here.
That's fine.
I said the NWO was the greatest faction of all time. And if you're lining up like guys, like per guy that you're talking about, I think the Click is where it all started.
Yeah, absolutely. That makes it harder. Makes it a lot harder.
Because they weren't technically an on-screen faction.
Right.
They've been on screen together several times, but you've got Shawn, Triple H. I mean, I didn't even mention DX, but they're just an offshoot of this.
Right.
Shawn, Triple H, Scott Hall, Kevin Nash, and Sean Waltman.
Yeah.
Both DX and the NWO were birthed out of that.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're lining it up, like technically that's the greatest faction to ever walk the planet.
Yeah.
To me.
Yeah.
But you can't count them because
they're not on screen.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah.
So, but to me, it's the NWO. It's followed by DX. Then it's the Four Horsemen. Then it's the Shield.
Yeah.
I do put the Shield up there just because, like you said, the reason I can't put the Shield higher is because they're not done.
Yeah.
That's the scary part.
Yeah. And I think, honestly, if their career ended, if all three careers ended today, I think there's an argument. I think there's an argument for all four to be number one, to be real honest.
Oh, sure.
Absolutely. If I had to do it, I would honestly probably put the Shield one. Excuse me, the allergies in Tennessee are amazing. Shield 1, NWO 2, Four Horsemen 3, DX 4.
Okay.
Because I think DX is great. I love DX. I thought the 2006 version was funny until I went and watched the original stuff, and I was like, oh, this is better. But like, it's hard when you have Shawn Michaels and Triple H to not be good. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So I think that four together, plus the original with China and everything else added in, it was great. So, but I think those are the four. I think Evolution is a close 5.
They're definitely a close 5.
But I think those are the 4.
I think Evolution, I think they suffered from just, and you could say this about the Shield too, suffered for just not having a long run together.
Yeah.
Like Evolution has had a couple of reunions like the Shield, but Evolution really only ran from 2003 to 2004. They only ran for a year because it was only 2003 that they formed. I'm trying to remember the exact date, but I can't. 2004 is when they turned on Randy because he won the title at SummerSlam.
And then what's 2000? Was it the next WrestleMania when it was Batista and Triple H? Because Batista won the Rumble.
Yep.
And then did the infamous thumbs up, thumbs down
thing. Yeah. So they just didn't have a long run. They had great. I mean, kudos to them and kudos to the Shield for not having a long run but producing stars.
Yeah, and I think that's what's so important, because I mean, if we're talking about 3 guys in a group, I think New Day is up there. Like, I really think New Day is up there because 2 of them are WWE champions. One of them won the King of the Ring, and they're how many time tag team champions? The longest reigning tag team champion. Kofi Kingston, I think, has the longest days as a champion, maybe in WWE, which is a ridiculous number that he has that. So I think like New Day is up there.
Sure they are.
And I think there's a long, but like you said, the New Day has been together for
Gosh,
6 years, 7 years, longer.
2000 and
Because we never got to see the Shield and New Day until Survivor Series a couple years ago.
that's right. So they formed right around the time Shield broke up.
It's like 2006, 2005, 2015, 2015, 2014.
So Shield broke up in 14. So we're probably looking at 14.
Probably.
Something like
so 7 years.
Yeah.
Something like that. Yeah. So they've been together for a long time. But like you said, the Shield and Evolution, the impact that they've had, the stars that they made in just a short amount of time. And I think that, like you said, the thing that makes the Shield so unique is the fact that they were nobodies, quote unquote.
Sure they were.
They were nobodies to the WWE universe. And all of a sudden they became, within a year, they became the biggest star, some of the biggest stars, even with John Cena and Randy Orton and Daniel Bryan and Triple H and CM Punk being a part of it.
Right. Man, we covered a lot of ground here with the Shield. There's just a lot to talk about with these three guys. And like I said just a few minutes ago, it's not over.
Do this episode in 10 years and see how long the episode's
going to be. It's not over, guys. This is one of the greatest factions of all time.
Yep.
And we wanted to talk about it. We wanted to celebrate it. 9 years. We had planned to do this episode a couple of weeks ago on the anniversary of their debut, but some other things came up. But we wanted to still make sure to get it in here for you. Anything else that you want to add about the Shield before we sign off?
Just, I love them, man. Like they are. Oh, I've said it 1,000 times. CM Punk is what got me in. But when he left, if the Shield wasn't around, I probably wouldn't have stayed.
Yeah.
And the Shield kept me in pro wrestling. And so, in a weird way, I owe my wrestling fandom to the Shield. And so I no matter what happens, they're always going to be probably my favorite tag team of all time.
I mean, what a way to go out on. He's Andy York. You can follow him at at Andy_PBW podcast. Sorry, at Andy_PBWP. I'm getting my social media handles mixed up.
That's fine.
At Chris Belcher 24 is how you can follow me. You can follow the show at PBW Podcast. We are on all of the podcast platforms, wherever you find your podcast. Make sure you download our show. Make sure you check out bodyslam.net's YouTube channel. Hit that subscribe button. I know they would appreciate that as well. Follow all of their other shows and make sure you follow the shows on SportsWire Radio. Throw them some support as well. Thank you so much for checking out our old school Monday edition of the Pipe Bomb Wrestling Podcast. Hope everybody had a happy Thanksgiving. Hope you ate a lot of turkey. Hopefully you're out of your coma by now. And hopefully you will come back and join us on Wednesday for another edition of the Pipe Bomb Wrestling Podcast. Again, my name is Chris Belcher. We will catch you guys down the road.